Welcome to Scuttlebutt Podcast. I'm Rich Mellon. Today we have a very special guest, and it's Cory Grover from Lights Out Snaring. And Cory, we tried to do this once before, but you were so busy during snaring season that you just couldn't make time for it.
That's right. No, it was hectic, and now things have settled down a bit, and able to sit down for a few minutes here, so it'll be good. Yeah, to visit.
Welcome to the podcast. I've got to tell you, you sent me some of your snares, your setups for both coyotes and wolves, and I got a chance to run them a little bit in the wintertime. Kind of got them halfway through the season, so I didn't get a really huge test, but I caught a few coyotes. Never ran into a wolf. I did have a moose get into a wolf snare, and it performed the way it should have. The moose walked away, no problems. But I think one of the things that I want to talk about is I want to talk about the system and how it works, and the various things that you've all brought together into one system, which makes it so successful. But let's talk about you a little bit and your history as a trapper. People like to know, did this guy just start trapping yesterday and I should listen to him, or does he have some background? Tell us about it.
Well, just as a kid, I guess I got to jump in with my grandfather. They actually had greyhounds, so him and another fella, they run coyotes a lot with the hounds.
Oh, cool.
And and if they weren't running with the hounds, they were checking footholds and stuff, and it just fascinated me from the get-go of the trapping and stuff, and playing around with that, getting to see that firsthand. And then I took my trapping license, I challenged it, and I dabbled in trapping a little bit, and my uncle did a little bit of snaring, and it was an exciting thing, because hey, let's get up and we'll go down to the barn and see what's dancing in a cable in the morning, right? Like, that's how the snares functioned back then. Like, it was just different, right? Like, to him it was new, and trying it. So I dabbled in it a little bit here and there. In the last 10-12 years, I've really kind of settled into getting the chance to get into the bush, and I've met a lot of friends and junior partnered on lines, and really learned a lot of stuff over the last 10-12 years, and like, I've been high level up with the Shawbs trapping up there, and down south of Calgary. Oh yeah, excellent. I actually was up with Kevin when we set the line there for the show. Yeah. So it was, we had, and then up at Bonnyville did the trapping and stuff up there. See, down here where I'm at, like, I'm East Central Alberta, so it's coyotes. That's coyotes or skunks, or there's none of the lynx and the fishers. And
describe your country. Give people a mental view of what your country looks like.
It's rolling hills, potholes, so a lot of poplar bluffs and slough bluffs and stuff like that. So what I call sloughs, or little ponds, I guess. They're the bushes might be 30, 40 yards across. Some of them get to be 100 yards kind of thing, but it's just patches of bush, and terrible coyote country. Terrible.
Yeah.
So, but it, like, for us, like even growing up, like, to see muskrats and beavers and stuff down here was a rarity, and we're starting to see, a few more of this, the beavers and the muskrats and stuff come through, but really just like I said, in the last 10-12 years, been just kind of going harder and harder at this thing. And when I was teaching for the ATA, and I try to go to as many workshops as I can, even just to sit in and listen to what guys have to say and stuff. And that's where this snaring thing come in, was just guys were struggling, right? Like, how come this guy can, how come it works for him and it doesn't for me? And how can we make this system
I
more user friendly, right?
Well, I mean, I always refer to life as a million piece puzzle. And every morning I get up, I got to find another piece to put into that puzzle to complete it. Maybe I have the answer by the end and I'll go and die, but
Yeah.
who knows, right? But
Well,
what it's all about though is that I have never had a wasted day when I've been talking to another trapper at whatever level they are. There's always something. If you're paying attention, there's always something. And one of my greatest weaknesses, I feel anyway, is I don't make those intuitive leaps that a lot of people do. Like when Morley, for instance, when he came up and did wolves with me and he just intuitively could look and say, well, a small wolf will go here and this will happen here. And he had that, he could have that conversation. You talked about the Shabs and how they would go take the Wolverine would claim a wolf bait and they would pee on it and they would go take meat that he peed on and put in the cage. And then that Wolverine had to go back because that was his. And I said to them, I said, I would have took fresh meat in there and put it in there. He says, oh, well, we did too. I said, so how did you come up with the idea that it was that it was important to take that? He says, because he had claimed that. He says, when you think about the Wolverine and you think about it from their point of view, and another great trapper told me the same thing. You want to understand what your set looks like? Get down on your knees. Get down on your hands and knees. And so when he said to begin with, we did put new stuff in there, but it didn't work. But he says if they went in there and we caught one, then the next one would go in there with pee on it. And he says, and so then they started putting it all together that we should have put the marked bait in there. But that was always my weakness, is making that intuitive leap. And I have the greatest respect for, I had a kid that, point out a thing with muskrat of all things, it's like, why didn't I think of that? I mean, you'd a lot of times you're already making allowances, but you're not making the connection within your brain what's actually going on. So that's cool. You talked about that snaring was just kind of starting, or it started with your uncle or your grandpa.
Yeah, uncle, and again, it was just a cable and a lock, and like I said, let's go see what's bouncing in the cable in the morning, right? Like,
and even those first locks were just like, we had the infamous figure 8 haywire. All it was so that it wouldn't loosen up at all, right? Now, as things have progressed, we've made it so that it tightens. It never loosens whatsoever, right?
Yeah. And everybody, everybody keeps going longer and longer wanting that entanglement, and the entanglement actually does less sight damage, but it's not helping in the function of the snare.
Okay, let's get into some technical here then.
Okay.
Explain entanglement.
Well, entanglement. So let's say you got a 10 or 12 foot leash on a dog or on a coyote or wolf or whatever. Entanglement is all a little brush and shrub and trees and stuff that he can get wrapped around with that cable. So everybody puts a swivel on because when they get caught, they'll roll. But as soon as they go around something with that cable, that swivel comes out of place. So that's like the swivel itself. I'll put them on there just for setting the snare if I'm running it, just for that purpose alone, just so that the snare hangs right. But when you get wrapped up, when it gets wrapped around a tree or light brush and stuff, it's just that fishing pole action where they can't pull hard enough to cinch that up. And that's, again, another reason the guy went longer, was to get those springs to fire. And with this system I've got here, we're able to shorten it up. We get less entanglement and more pull on the end of that snare, making things cinch up. And they're able to pull harder without that fishing pole action, if that makes sense.
Okay. I think the original reason that people started going with longer and longer snares was for entanglement, and was for the fact that they'd get wrapped around and they get in an awkward situation, or they might jump over a limb and basically, they can't take the weight off the snare. Then the snare is that much more efficient, right? And that's right. That was what the whole idea behind it, the long snares, at least in my my history with it was we started going to those long snares just because they would get tangled up and they couldn't get themselves out of trouble. Whereas if,
Yep.
you know, when you take a look at places where they don't have lethal snares, like in a lot of places in the US, they're limited to a 3-foot snare.
Hey folks, Rich from Trapping Inc. TV here. And we all have our idea of the perfect morning. You know what I'm talking about. For me, the perfect morning starts with the aroma and flavor of freshly brewed Old Smokes coffee. Studies have shown that just the smell of fresh coffee can boost brain activity. No kidding. Well, that's certainly no secret to me. I can barely talk before that first cup. Just ask Sandy. I'm a dark roast man, and Old Smokes Coffee's darkest roast, Stout Maple, is what gets my day in gear. Extra dark, it's strong, aromatic, and smooth. Gets me revved up for whatever the day throws at me. Old Smokes roast their coffee over wood fires, the old-fashioned way. Wood roasting takes more time, much longer than modern hot air roasting. Slow roasting over wood takes the bitter out of the bean and imparts a heavenly taste and aroma from the wood smoke. Old Smokes makes a roast perfect for each person. There are 5 roasts, from light to extra dark, each roasted over a different wood for a unique flavor. Did you know the darker the roast, the lower the caffeine content? It's true. Caffeine is a volatile oil that evaporates with roasting. The lightest roast has the most caffeine, and the darkest roasts have the most flavor. Right now, you can order from their online store and use our promo code RICH, that's RICH, and get 10% off your entire order. Pretty simple. Just go to www.oldsmokescoffee.com, that's OLE smokescoffee.com, and use the promo code RICH. That is promo code RICH for 10% off your entire order. And now let's get to today's show.
So, I mean, basically that coyote's sitting there on its butt. It can't get itself into trouble. So when we were going, before kill springs became popular, that's the other thing I guess we got to talk about is that, you know, there's 2 different snares you're talking about, those with kill springs and those without kill springs, and why that makes the system different. Yep. But before we had kill springs, I mean, it was, entanglement was a good deal, because anything you could do to shorten up and reduce what the situation he was in was good, right?
That's right. Yep.
And now though we want a straightaway pull, and why is it important that you not have that fishing rod? Is, I guess, is because, you know, I think yours are set for 26.5 pounds.
Yeah. Right. Yep. That's right.
Okay. You, for your kill spring is, do you have one in there? Do you have a kill spring?
Yep. I do have one here. Just give me 1 second. Got all sorts of stuff just laying here. So yeah, that's our A1 spring here. Okay. You can see that.
Okay. Do you have one that is loaded?
That is loaded. I got one of them here too. Just give me a second. So here's one that's loaded.
Okay. So what we're talking about is the pressure that it takes for that as that slides together, right? Your lock slides up against that spring, and when the pressure hits 26.5 pounds, it's enough to compress the spring, and the trigger falls off, and boom, you're adding that pressure. And how much pressure is that spring adding now?
Now this spring here with the Magnum spring is roughly 50 pounds. It's right in that ballpark of 50 pounds. The signature series, so the bigger spring is pushing 75.
75.
So
that is why it's important. And when you think about it, you've got a coyote that on average is 35 pounds.
Yeah.
And you want him to develop 26.5 pounds of pressure. Yep. So it is important that he doesn't have anything interfering with it. So we have 2 very different animals here, the kill spring and the non-kill spring.
That's right. And the biggest thing too is to have, you've got way more control over what's going on if they can pull versus hit the end, because when they hit the end, you get that bounce.
Yeah.
So then you've got the possibility of that slip, of that lock, and that's where like with the slip of the lock, that's where the bigger springs come in to take up the cable slip or that lock slip, the slack out of the end, right?
Well, and I mean, the other thing too, if it's too long and they're running, they can go out around a tree. And when they finally hit enough pressure, I mean, that it's not pulling properly on it. It's not setting it properly, right?
Yeah, so that's right.
As we have moved towards getting more efficient with these, I believe you were involved in the FIC study for kill springs.
Yep, that's right. Yep. No,
There are trappers that are
snares,
using
that's
your
right.
Explain how this works. Not many people understand how the FIC tests traps or snares or whatever. Just explain how it works.
So basically they've gone through, I believe, and don't quote me on any of this, but they've gone through and picked certain locks and springs and triggers and different combinations. So they've gone through. My first year with them was back in 2018, and we went through. I prototyped that signature series spring with them. It was a larger spring, but they've gone through a progression of pieces and things that worked and didn't work, and how they setting up cameras and videoing captures, and now they know, like, certain locks work better than other locks, certain springs work better than other springs. There's I believe a best practice that's coming out with it, but I think the biggest thing was what I got. They could tell when the coyote was caught and when the spring was released, because the eyes basically roll back in the head. That's on camera. They've
I've seen the trail camera, and and when that spring is released, and it doesn't matter which brand or whatever, when that spring is released, they all of a sudden their eyes, they start blinking, and then they're down and out in no time flat. But what I'm saying here is that the FIC is actually engaging trappers in the process. You are trappers are using your equipment, trappers are using the other guy's equipment, whatever, and so they're spreading it out, so it's not, you're kind of getting rid of some of the bias. Like one person might be really good at those best practices you're talking about, and another person may not be, but you're kind of getting an averaging effect. A lot of people don't understand that when they test wolf traps or whatever, they go out and so many different trappers have this brand and so many different trappers have that. And from that, I guess in a way, if the trapper is good at documenting what he's doing, is where the best practices come from, because we all of a sudden discover, well, we needed another swivel, or we needed this or that. Not in particular to your springs, but I'm talking about, like, I kind of took them to task over their wolf trap testing, and then all of a sudden a bunch of wolf traps passed their testing. But they had, for people that don't know, wolf traps have a very set series of parameters that they have to fit into. They have to be a certain size. They have to have a certain amount of offset in them. They have to, have swivels in a certain place and that kind of stuff. And when you get down to that, where they all have to have these functions, then how does one fail? So then it came down to the best practices side, right? So if you had one trapper was putting 3 swivels on and it was he wasn't having any problems with that trap, and the next guy was not putting any more swivels on, you got down to the point where the best practices were more important than the actual trap itself was. And so, I mean, that it's neat to have all these different trappers using your gear and developing those best practices, because it certainly helps you. And
for sure.
And you have that insight that allowed you to design this system and look at it. And sometimes when they come to you and say, well, this is going on when I do this, and you might have one of those aha moments. I've been living my life for an aha moment, but I haven't.
Well, and that was just it, right? Like in 2018 when I did so I had one bait station. I showed them the springs that I had, the bigger springs, the signature series springs. And they went, oh yeah, let's get some samples with that, right? So, and that's what I did. I had one bait station. They only wanted 6 coyotes because they wanted to see what was going on. So the first 6 coyotes that come out of that station, they were froze in the freezer, and then I hauled them up to their test facility for necropsies and stuff. We actually got invited back up to see the veterinarian go through the necropsy and see what was happening in there.
Okay, so explain this. Explain now, when you go there and you've got a dead coyote, the first thing you do is you just cut the snare off back at the mount, right?
Well, that's right. So what
you
we
leave
did,
the snare around the neck, all that stuff. Like, this is important. This is the details that people don't know about. Tell us about them.
So what we did was, so we left, so when we built the snares, we left a single stop loose on the cable. So when the animal was captured, we were able to run the single stop down to the cam lock and crimp it down there onto the cable so that lock couldn't slip or move.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So all that was stationary. So when the coyotes were semi thawed out enough that they could do the necropsy part of things, so they would thaw the coyotes, and then they open the hide and stuff up on them so that they can get down to the neck, and then they've got a little mechanism where they tie into those carotid arteries, which are tiny. They're like a 1/16 cable buried down in deep in the neck, right?
Yeah.
Like it's amazing how deep they are and how tight we can.
That's why the systems like you're making is so important for the canine.
Hey, Rich here. Sandy and I are pleased at the rapid growth of our exclusive community, Trapping Inc. at locals.com. We created the community to connect more closely with our fans, friends, and supporters without the interference and censorship of social media companies. Because this community is subscriber exclusive, there is no censored photos, shadow banning, and deplatforming as happens on Twitter and Facebook. Trolls are non-existent, as not a one will spend a nickel and put their money where their mouth is to protest on a paid site. You know it. We are steadily moving all Trapping Inc. YouTube videos and podcasts as quickly as time and bandwidth allow. We're tickled and surprised to see how large of library we must move. As well, we are sharing articles on trapping and guns and shooting. Our new TV series, Married to the Hunt, videos are here too. Hours and hours of never before released to the internet hunting and fishing from around the world. TrappingInc.locals.com will be the exclusive home of all Trapping Inc. content from the past and into the future. What else is there to do? Well, there's a forum for everyone to post pictures on and interact. You can message us directly on TrappingInc.locals.com, as well as interact with all the other subscribers. These are all people with common interests. Get in here. This whole venture is about taking the Trapping Inc. TV community to the next level, building a community of shared interest and interacting with all of our friends. Who knows where we can go from here? Just go to locals.com and sign up for a free account. Then search for Trapping Inc. and subscribe for $5 a month. That's it. Go to locals.com to open a free account and then subscribe for $5 a month to Trapping Inc. Help us spread the truth about a way of life and the responsible, ethical management of the wild resources. TrappingInc.locals.com. Now back to the show.
It's very buried and hidden and links it's on the surface. You know, it's like
and that's so what they do with that is, so they open everything up. He ties into the carotid arteries and with this little pump system, and he can pump on it, and both ends are open. So he ties into the one line and he starts pumping, and he keeps track of the pressure and stuff. And if something's coming out, they know it's open. If they just pressure up and nothing comes out, they know it's closed. So
what pressure?
And I can't remember the pressure on it.
Come on, man.
I know these are technical.
I'm a gear tool guy. I gotta know that.
Yeah. I honestly, I'm not sure, and I don't even want to throw a number at it. It isn't a huge number because the tube that he puts into that artery, there's nothing holding it in there necessarily, right? So
we're not talking 10 psi.
No. but enough that either his tool's coming out or the fluid's coming through the other side. So, and So I watched 5 out of the 6 coyote necropsies there, and we did the 5 I seen were good. They were 100% occlusion, and at that point I knew that those springs were doing what they needed to do. And again, the only thing different with those coyotes when that started was I run my cable through the cam locks and stuff different. At that point I was running cam locks, so I thread my cable different, and that was one of the only differences between mine and then the other samples was that big spring, and then how I was running the cable through the lock and the breakaways. So
Well, how this all started, I mean, there are two in at least in Alberta or Canada in the West here, two styles of snare systems. There's free hanging snares and there's the power ram. Okay, and the power ram is really quite popular, and it's popular with me because it's a system. You know,
right.
you have a cable that's hanging off it that you wrap around a tree. You set the other end in the, you know, it has a spike on it, a foot on the spike, and you set that down on the ground next to your trail. Take your safety off, walk away. You know, it's fast. Okay,
that's right.
And I'm just one of them kind of guys that I like to keep things organized and keep, you know, fast, right? Should have been a race car driver. I'd have been dead by now, but should have been. I'm a terrible driver. So you started looking at this stuff, and as we got into doing the free hanging stuff, I mean, God, we hated those first, because you'd get there and you'd be setting it up, and that big spring would then take and slide down and fall on the trail, and you bring it back up. It was just, and you had the snare had to be long enough to go it around, or you had to add an extension, and there was the support stuff and everything. It was, you were like, you know, you're packing a sleigh with you just to drag all your crap along to set up every snare. So it wasn't really popular. Wasn't popular at all.
No.
You know, because
so
many
guys look at.
Go ahead. To begin with, so many snares so many free hanging snares were just hung over a branch. You know, there was no weight or anything there. It was just hung over a branch, and it would, you know, if you're using 1x19 or whatever, it would hold a good enough loop for a coyote's head to go through. It doesn't take a lot for a coyote, and it just you added that spring in there, and the weight of that spring just threw everything off, and that's why I like your system so much, because now we're ending up, and you're going to explain it, and hopefully you have some gear there to show us how it all works, but it becomes a system that's just as efficient as that power ram that I like, you know, that I can just ram in there, put the anchor around a tree and walk away, right? It's fast.
Well, and that was another, you know, that was another aha moment with the coiled wires, like to be able to weave your snare in and out of it, and because there's systems out there where those coils are tight together, and you got to crimp a single stop on the backside, and then you take the 9-wire off the tree with the coyote, and you go back to the shop and you make another one, and
show us your coil. Show us your coil. Exactly, you're talking about.
So this is the coil.
Exactly. Now, do you have a snare there? Show us how it goes together. Everybody understands how 9-wire works. That 9-wire will be wrapped around the tree, anchoring it, and it becomes your anchor.
That's right. So this is just one of our 12-inch wires, but this end here would get anchored to a tree. The 12-inch ones, you can add whatever length of wire you want to it to wrap around your tree, but that's your anchor solid system. The snare itself, we've got, this is a 1/16 cable, and we're running, this is a 1/16 Keflock 280 breakaway with our A1 spring and trigger. Now, the biggest thing with these, if you see this little 45-degree bend in the cable, if you overbend this, when that spring goes to fire, you've got all this slack to take out now. If you can see that hump, it basically, these smaller springs will stroke out if you overbend this.
Okay.
So, and it's important, because I found out the hard way, like when you bend them right over, man, they look really good, but you start having troubles with it. So that's a key point, is not overbending that, so that cable, when it pulls tight, that bend will come out and straighten. As the spring releases, it's not trying to take up extra slack that it just doesn't have the stroke to do. So on the end, so this is a 38-inch piece of cable, and all we're doing is just weaving the snare in.
I love that. That is so I like that. And then boom, there's your snare size is the correct size. You're not putting in some stop or a whammy to hold it.
That's right. And then, you know, if you want to go with a smaller loop, you just pull the tail out the backside. you can run sticks or branches in here to, you know, camouflage this if you want. You can shove them down in the coil, press them into the coil. We added this this little leg on the front here for guys that were wanting. Some guys are running longer snares with these, but they like the support system.
Yeah.
So they want to put a whammy on the front of it.
Okay.
They still like to run the whammy, so they just take and they'll bend this forward.
Yep.
And then they can put their whammy on it. But the nice part is, like, a lot of the places I'm running these, they're bait stations that I rebait every year, so these stay on the tree.
Yeah.
I can just weave my snare in and out of them, and
that comes in like 40, 44 or 48 inch
I've
long.
got them. I got 12 inch, I got 40 inch, and 58.
Right.
So just, and I think the biggest thing, like adding your own wire to these. So shipping wise, these 12 inchers, if you're handy enough to crimp a double ferrule and another piece of number 9 wire onto these, you can make them however long you want. Like, I've got one guy, he's adding 5 feet of 9 cable to my 40 inch ones.
Okay.
Because of his tree size.
He's
got big trees. Yeah. Where
you wouldn't know about that down there.
With, yeah, no. So, and that's the thing, like, there's so many other different uses too for the coil, but if your 9 wire's all buggered up on the anchor end, you can cut it and crimp this coil back onto another piece of 9 wire and you're going again.
Yep.
If for some reason your coil kind of gets a little tweaked up, for whatever reason, just straighten her back out and weave her in, and away you go. And if you don't like this piece sticking out the front here, just cut it off. But I tried adding different things to the system that guys were looking for. So, and that was one of them. And
what I like, once again, though, is that it becomes a set. It becomes a system. Okay.
Yep.
You take there and you wrap your 9 wire around the tree so that it's out over your trail.
Yep.
Thread in your snare, set it up. I mean, it's already the correct length and everything, correct size.
Yep.
Adjust for height, walk away. Because your 9 wire with that coil on it is your anchor. You know,
Yep.
you've eliminated one there. You have your preset for size. You have a kill spring on it. Like, I mean, you put it all together really nice. You know, I mean, I really like that. And you went with an anodized cable as well, right?
Well, yeah. And I was, again, we're always spending all this extra money on propane and boiling snares and baking soda. And the trouble with baking soda on our cables, once we heat it up.
Hey folks, Rich from Trapping Inc. TV here. And we all have our idea of the perfect morning. You know what I'm talking about. For me, the perfect morning starts with the aroma and flavor of freshly brewed Old Smokes coffee. Studies have shown that just the smell of fresh coffee can boost brain activity. No kidding. Well, that's certainly no secret to me. I can barely talk before that first cup. Just ask Sandy. I'm a dark roast man, and Old Smokes Coffee's darkest roast, Stout Maple, is what gets my day in gear. Extra dark, it's strong, aromatic, and smooth. Gets me revved up for whatever the day throws at me. Old Smokes roast their coffee over wood fires, the old-fashioned way. Wood roasting takes more time, much longer than modern hot air roasting. Slow roasting over wood takes the bitter out of the bean and imparts a heavenly taste and aroma from the wood smoke. Old Smokes makes a roast perfect for each person. There are 5 roasts, from light to extra dark, each roasted over a different wood for a unique flavor. Did you know the darker the roast, the lower the caffeine content? It's true. Caffeine is a volatile oil that evaporates with roasting. The lightest roast has the most caffeine, and the darkest roasts have the most flavor. Right now, you can order from their online store and use our promo code RICH. That's RICH. And get 10% off your entire order. Pretty simple. Just go to www.oldsmokescoffee.com. That's OLE smokescoffee.com and use the promo code RICH. That is promo code RICH for 10% off your entire order. And now let's get to today's show.
We boil these snares to doll them up. That baking soda basically absorbs into the coils of that snare cable.
Yep.
And it over time eats it away from the inside out. And I got talking to my cable supplier, and he's like, well, do you want to try this anodized stuff we get in for the theater? He said, it's all the same strengths and everything. And I'm like, well, send me some, let's have a look. Right. And I know
Oh,
guys have tried it in the past. And my cable supplier, I have all the faith in the world of what they're giving me for cable. Like, no, we,
what I liked about it is that it's black.
Yep.
Okay. It's black and it doesn't have any oil on it. So,
Yep.
I mean, because in order to put an anodized finish on it, it's done through an electrical current, a liquid bath and electrical current. So, I mean, you've already got rid of the oil. You know, it's,
Yep.
I mean, you've got rid of that step, like you said. You don't
Yep.
use the baking soda for the cleaning, so you don't actually damage anything. It's just quick. You just pick it up and go.
Yep.
You know, like, I mean, I need one less thing in my life every day, let alone, you know, two more things.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, if you're worried about oils and stuff on, like, sometimes I'll just run into the house and I'll throw my components in a pot and throw them on the stove for just to boil them there on the stove if I'm worried about scent and stuff. Like obviously these washers and stuff are a little bit shiny. I can't anodize everything, but that black cable, it's amazing how it disappears in the trees, and, and even with the white background and stuff. Like when I tested it here in the yard, I got 2 black labs and they got trails through the trees, and I went and I hung galvanized cable in there, and they'd either duck it or jump it. And I took the black stuff in there and I hung it in the same spot, and they nailed it on their chest every time. So when I see that happening, I'm like, okay, this could be a game changer, because if they're not picking that up, and if they're not picking it, you know, they're picking the galvanized stuff up just like a barbed wire fence, right?
Yep. Well,
Like,
so I was wondering whether it was a recognition factor or they could they actually see the galvanized better. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and and I'd ask them, but they won't talk back. Yeah.
It would be the best conversation you had all day.
Wouldn't it? So, and as far as, you know, like the locks and stuff, I just found like a couple years ago with the cam locks that I was filing for guys, like, I did no complaints, guys. Like, this is the best season we've had, and, you know, like, we want more. And then the next year I had a few guys, they were having a little bit of troubles, and I was really pulling my hair out on it, because
explain what you mean when you say you were filing cam locks.
So let me see if I got one of these handy here. So I take a smooth Bridger 3/32 cam lock, and so what I do when I modify them is I drill the hole out here for the breakaway.
Yeah.
So that breakaway flows nice, because we end up getting that binding with the breakaways in there, and it can actually pry those open. It's leverage on them, which makes them open. So you can see on this one, this is a Bridger 3/32 lock.
Yeah.
It's a straight tooth lock.
Yeah.
But you can see how that breakaway is tight in there.
Right.
And that just creates leverage versus these ones here where I drill them out. And you got to use the smooth ones because they're not hardened.
Right. Gotcha.
So I drill those holes out, and then I put a real steep, I don't know if you can see that, a real steep angle on the I file that on. So the whole idea of that is that angle will drop into the braid of the cable.
Oh,
it's just like the teeth on a zip tie.
Gotcha.
Like, you can, and then it holds where the straight tooth locks will hold. But if you give them a little bit of, like, you're jerking on it a little bit and they start to skid, they got to work back and forth to get gummed up again to grab that cable, where this diagonal or this angle that I've got these filed on, they just drop in between the braid, and then they don't back up as easy. And then again, threading the cable the way I thread it, and having that spring pushing on the lever to keep it closed, it just works.
So that was real good one year, but then the next year you were having
Well,
more...
it was on the 5/64th cable. I run a different file. It's a smoother, it's a finer file. And what was happening was the hair was getting jammed in the locks. They were a woollier coyote on the neck. And the only thing that I could see was that the locks were getting jammed with hair. And I just, I was ready to throw the towel in. I was getting crabby, but it wasn't making sense. So then that's when I started playing around with all the different slide locks and stuff, and kind of went backwards, looking at what a guy could use. So there's lots of good slide locks out there, but every one of them I had to do a modification to them. I either had to drill them out or I had to do something to get the breakaway on there. And we got to have a breakaway on there for the function of the snare. It adds in how the snare functions and just makes it smoother. Like I've had some guys say, well, the spring isn't working on my snares. And I'm like, well, send me a picture. Well, they're running the cable through the hole in the cam lock and putting the spring on the other side. Well, the spring can't do anything.
Hold one up and explain this here.
So what they were doing, so this is what so they were running, instead of a breakaway here, they put the cable through and then put a spring on the other side and then hope that it pulled the slack, right? And it, you know, just because you have the components, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're
exactly
going to work. Where with that, you know, that breakaway in there, it just, it rounds this out nice.
Yeah.
Now I did notice in this little section here, if you've got, and I'm working on that now too, but the, depending on where this ends up on that carotid artery, there's a potential of having just a little bit of seepage, right? So if I could get this figured out where I could have everything set in the exact right spot every time. But
I mean, it's you've got what, like there's a quarter inch where that could where it could be. So I mean,
we're splitting hairs. We're splitting hairs. I mean,
we are, and nothing's ever going to be 100%. Even
that's right.
Even the you know, when you take a look at the HEDIS and on our traps, and like body grip traps have to kill or incapacitate in 120 seconds, 80% of the time. You know, I mean, it doesn't have to be 100%. Nothing's ever going to be 100% because you can never take that one. The biggest variable out of it is that animal. So, you know, and how that animal,
that's where you get into,
you know, how that animal has his head turned when he goes through the snare is, you know, that could be good or bad. You know what I mean? You know?
Yep. Well, and that's just it. Like, did he go through and the snare was sideways when it come down and fired?
Yeah.
Like, and then he monkeyed around and he straightened it out on the neck. So now you've got that, again, you got that slip of that lock. It's trying to take that up and the spring's pulling on the other side. Like there's lots of different variables and things that can happen here. And that's where I think a lot of this, it does help taking it out. It gets rid of some of the issues. I think one of the other issues is reusing equipment. Reusing cam locks, reusing breakaways. If we could keep track of every one of those ones we've got out there, and is that where our problems are coming from?
Oh, it's reused gear,
reused gear. You get, it's.
I understand people wanting to reuse stuff. I'm always concerned when it comes to snares. I mean, I reuse a lock for links all the time. Like over and over and over again. I probably have locks that have caught 20 or 30 links.
Hey, Rich here. Sandy and I are pleased at the rapid growth of our exclusive community, Trapping Inc. at locals.com. We created the community to connect more closely with our fans, friends, and supporters without the interference and censorship of social media companies. Because this community is subscriber exclusive, there is no censored photos, shadow banning, and deplatforming as happens on Twitter and Facebook. Trolls are non-existent, as not a one will spend a nickel and put their money where their mouth is to protest on a paid site. You know it. We are steadily moving all Trapping Inc. YouTube videos and podcasts as quickly as time and bandwidth allow. We're tickled and surprised to see how large of library we must move. As well, we are sharing articles on trapping and guns and shooting. Our new TV series, Married to the Hunt, videos are here too. Hours and hours of never before released to the internet hunting and fishing from around the world. TrappingInc.locals.com will be the exclusive home of all Trapping Inc. content from the past and into the future. What else is there to do? Well, there's a forum for everyone to post pictures on and interact. You can message us directly on TrappingInc.locals.com, as well as interact with all the other subscribers. These are all people with common interests. Get in here. This whole venture is about taking the Trapping Inc. TV community to the next level, building a community of shared interest and interacting with all of our friends. Who knows where we can go from here? Just go to locals.com and sign up for a free account. Then search for Trapping Inc. and subscribe for $5 a month. That's it. Go to locals.com to open a free account and then subscribe for $5 a month to Trapping Inc. Help us spread the truth about a way of life and the responsible, ethical management of the wild resources. TrappingInc.locals.com. Now back to the show.
Just that one single lock, but there's nothing. A lynx is not an easy or not a hard thing to kill with a snare. I mean, their carotids are very exposed and they're occluded. Boom, it's over with in just a minute. But when you've got a bigger stress system, it's kind of like using a quarter-inch rope to pull a quad, but you wouldn't use it to pull your 1-ton truck. I mean, you or if you did once, you wouldn't do it again. So this is the system you're in there. These are going through a much tougher duty cycle, and sometimes they shouldn't be reused.
That's just it.
You wouldn't reuse the cable. You wouldn't reuse the cable. Nobody even thinks about reusing the cable or reusing the stops. But why that? Yeah. I don't know. Is it $1 or whatever that it costs for that lock? You know what I mean?
The lock and breakaway, like with these slide locks, these Kef locks that I've got. I mean, we're $1 into it. Yeah. For a breakaway and a lock. And if I don't know, I'm almost to my thought is I owe it to the next coyote I catch to make sure everything's functional.
I mean,
it's $1 on a. If they were $15 coyotes, I could see your $15.
Exactly. That's exactly where I was going. I just looked on this morning, waiting to start this interview. I looked on my account, and I think my top coyotes were like $139.40, and my total average for all my coyotes, including some junk that I sent in, was $87. Well, holy cow! I'm not going to lose out on one of those for an $87 bill for a $1 lock. I'm sorry, I'm just not going to do that. There's a lot of other work that's went to that coyote hitting that spring and that lock, but
and it's the humaneness of it, I guess, too, right? Like we're trying to get humane, more humane. So if we're having better luck with just new locks and new breakaways instead of reusing, then maybe we owe it to the next coyote to spend the extra $1. And like the springs and stuff, I mean, like I run stainless wire on my springs. They're, I didn't skimp on quality.
And they're all reusable easily.
Yeah.
If all you're putting is a new breakaway and a new lock on it, I mean, like, of course, your new cable. I mean, holy cow, guys,
Well, I had one guy, he goes, well, I used it I used it 5 times and then the trigger started slipping off. Well, I'm like, well, I said, how much did it cost you? You get your $1.75 out of that or what? And all it was right here on the tip of that trigger was just to take the pliers and just give it a little tweak.
Yeah.
So, but again, when the old springs and stuff, they're so soft when you
compress them.
Went to set. Yeah. And they wouldn't open up to 90 degrees where these open to 90 degrees. I made sure that when I went through the process that we were getting what we wanted, your the quality of the product is there. So
okay, I'm sure you have some used pieces of cable that show how that Keflock works, but I want you to explain why that's better than a cam lock. There's a couple of good reasons, and people will go, aha, when they see it.
Well, I guess this one here, I don't know, it's probably not the best, but you can see how that lock, that cable comes up through here and bends, right, as that goes to release.
Okay, so
And
now this pipe is like the neck of a coyote.
that's right. Yeah.
Okay,
It's
so, yeah, hold it up so we can
it's
see.
roughly 2 inches, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So it's, and I know that the snares are coming tighter tkind of
Yep.
on the coyote's neck, but it just to show how the spring and everything here, how this all kind of functions.
Yeah.
I don't have that one where it shows, you can see the progression of the lock. So the lock, you could see where it hooked up, it slid down on the, and you could see it on the black cable. It worked back and forth a little bit. It shined it up. It caught again. And then on the fourth go, you could see it had kinked over, and you could tell that was where the spring released, because.
So here's the thing. Hold it up just a little bit. Hold it up.
Yep.
Oh, that's good. So what people need to understand is that cable was flowing through there smooth, but now it's around the neck and it gets down to the tight where it binds. Now the cable can't flow back through that, can't flow back through your lock. That is bound. And at some point around there is when the 26.5 pounds is developed, the spring fires. So there's no slippage there because you've got that cable crimped in there. I mean, it's such an incredible system, right?
Well, and again, you can see right here, that little bit of gap in that pipe.
Yeah.
And that's where I was talking, right? That you get that little bit of space, that the potential of that missing that one carotid artery, but
that's with any system though. I mean,
yeah,
you know,
I mean, it's, yeah, exactly. It's just one of those things. Like I used a couple years ago, these, I used 5/64 cable. I swore I'd never use 1/16 cable again, because a few years prior, it was just, we were getting twist outs, right?
Yeah.
They're chew outs or twist outs. I call them twist outs. If you ever take a piece of 1/16 cable and put a loop in one end, put the other end in the vise, and just put a screwdriver in there and twist it up, it'll ball up. Give it a couple of tugs, and it just starts to fray, and another tug. When that ball's there in front of that coyote, he's going to chew on it. It's what he can see, and he'll chew on it, and I'm sure he's breaking strands of cable and stuff, but I consider him twist outs more than chew outs, but we can argue about that another day. But when I was running these down on the line, like, so we had bobcats, lynx, and stuff. So I was running all these coil wires and these slide locks and breakaways. So I had one snare that I was running for the whole line. And when I reached into the bag to grab a snare, I knew what I had. And it was just a matter of weaving it in on a lynx pen. I'd pull this back. I know we don't need a spring and stuff for lynx and that. They will release them, but I don't have to have 15 different snare lengths and different sizes for what I was doing, right? And that to me made it made sense to do it that way. Now you get Wolverines and stuff in there. Now we've got the killing power here to
you would actually keep a Wolverine with that kill spring when you won't. I mean, I've watched him, you come up and you talk about something that rolls. Oh my God, there's a Wolverine in a snare roll, and you just have this ball there, and the Wolverine's gone. And in a wolf snare, a 3/32 wolf snare won't hold them, because you need to have that killing power, right?
Well, and I'd sent some snares to a guy up north, and they were wolf snares. So they were 10-foot snares that I was making for him. I had a 7x7 anchor end, and then a 5-foot anchor end, and then a 6-foot loop. So I guess they're 11 feet, but with a swivel in the middle. And he sent me pictures. He said, I've never caught a Wolverine in a wolf snare that killed it and could reset.
Yeah.
He said the area's been, he said, I cannot believe, he sent me pictures of it, that he said that Wolverine was snuffed out, and I was able to reset my snare there. he said
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
And to be clear, we cannot, it's not legal to use Wolverine or
No.
snares for Wolverine, but it happens. You know, because the
That's
first thing, they attend all of your wolf baits, all that kind of stuff, and that ends up happening. It's not, we don't target it, but I would sooner, if he got into it, that we killed it rather than having it running around with part of a snare on its neck or whatever, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yep. No,
Talk about,
and I think a lot of times they'll, yeah. Oh, so go ahead.
go finish your thought.
Hey folks, Rich from Trapping Inc. TV here. And we all have our idea of the perfect morning. You know what I'm talking about. For me, the perfect morning starts with the aroma and flavor of freshly brewed Old Smokes coffee. Studies have shown that just the smell of fresh coffee can boost brain activity. No kidding. Well, that's certainly no secret to me. I can barely talk before that first cup. Just ask Sandy. I'm a dark roast man, and Old Smokes Coffee's darkest roast, Stout Maple, is what gets my day in gear. Extra dark, it's strong, aromatic, and smooth. Gets me revved up for whatever the day throws at me. Old Smokes roast their coffee over wood fires, the old-fashioned way. Wood roasting takes more time, much longer than modern hot air roasting. Slow roasting over wood takes the bitter out of the bean and imparts a heavenly taste and aroma from the wood smoke. Old Smokes makes a roast perfect for each person. There are 5 roasts, from light to extra dark, each roasted over a different wood for a unique flavor. Did you know the darker the roast, the lower the caffeine content? It's true. Caffeine is a volatile oil that evaporates with roasting. The lightest roast has the most caffeine, and the darkest roasts have the most flavor. Right now, you can order from their online store and use our promo code RICH. That's RICH. And get 10% off your entire order. Pretty simple. Just go to www.oldsmokescoffee.com. That's OLE smokescoffee.com and use the promo code RICH. That is promo code RICH for 10% off your entire order. And now let's get to today's show.
Oh, I think when they come up to the snares, and I think they just get rubbing on them, right? Like I think they're at the right height there where they're seeing the bottom of the snare, and then they just get, curiosity gets the better of them.
Could be.
And playing with the cable, I think. Yeah. So
talk about why you went with that style of lock and your thoughts on how it slides through the fur, that kind of thing.
Well, so with these locks, so the reason I went with them was, one of the biggest reasons was originally was how all I had to do was turn the breakaway from an S hook to a J to get it to go through the hole in the lock.
Right.
And that, so again, was a big selling feature to me on these snares or these locks. Now the 1/16 lock, calf lock, they'll work on a 564 cable, but they're draggy. They'll drop to a certain point, and then they need a bit of a pull to get them to close tighter. And so that was why I went with, I actually had the manufacturer make me 564 locks for 564 cable. So I do have those, but when this comes down, this lock is pushing the hair out of the way.
Exactly.
Where with a cam lock, you've got an open hole here. So this is usually jammed full of hair as this comes down.
Yep.
And then it just you get skidding, and that's,
you've always got a pinch of hair in your cam lock.
Well, with those straight tooth, well, you do, and with those straight tooth locks, that's one of the downsides to it is it'll skid, and if they're it takes a bit of going back and forth either to get the hair burnt off of it or for it to grab and get gummed up again. And that's why with that 5/64 lock that I was filing, I still have guys, that's the only lock they'll run, because they've had 2 great seasons with them now. And but it's just one of them things. So I went with that. It was easy to put a breakaway on it. And again, it just pushes that. The hair isn't going to interfere with how this lock's working. So it takes that problem out of the factor.
Exactly. So I mean, once again, system is only as strong as its weakest part. And when you started working with those breakaways, you had some major surprises, didn't you?
Oh yeah, no, for sure. And there's yeah, that's a whole other story too. But
Oh, let's hear it.
no, like a lot of it is like I like the 280 Sullivan breakaways. There's the 280s and the 285s, I believe, are the same. It's the same breakaway, just depends where you buy them to what the poundage is on them. Now they make a nice rounded loop, and to me that's key to the strength of this. They're easy to crimp, and they make a nice rounded loop on both sides.
Yeah.
And when if you ever try doing pull tests and stuff in the shop with them, these things are as close to what they're telling you for poundage as anything. Now, there's some other ones on the market that they've got a little bit funnier design. You got to over crimp them and stuff to make them open at a higher poundage. And a lot of guys are just, there's too much to me, there's too much human error, I guess, involved there. Like if it's one thing for me to just go up to the swager and start squeezing stuff down because I know where I want them.
Yep.
If it's a feel thing, I guess, basically. Yeah. And that's what I liked about these 280s and the 525 pound breakaways, is that you don't need a feel thing to it. It just squeeze her down until she touches. It's a round, simple breakaway loop, and they're strong. They hold up.
You were telling me off air that some breakaways were breaking at less than half of their rated poundage.
Yep, down as low as anywhere from 130 to 150 pounds. And I mean, I was crudely doing it in the shop. I bought an inline crane scale, and I just, like I say, I was using my hydraulic floor jack, and just watching the scale pressures. It is just a straight pull.
Yeah.
And videoing it, and you could just see things starting to wiggle, and then all of a sudden they kink over at those weaker points and those breakaways, where these 280s, it basically stretched out to a big S. Now I'm not sure if I got one of those sitting here or not. I don't think I do, but you could just see the difference in how it pulled, and by cranking these, like turning these from an S to a J, we're not taking the strength out of the breakaway, because we're not affecting this loop.
Right.
And that's the key to it. Yeah. Like I say, I don't have the other ones here to show you, but
I mean, it was all part of the system. And
that's right.
When you're counting on something, when they rated it at 280, and all of a sudden it's opening at 130, and you know, then you're getting complaints and failures, and that you start scratching your head, right? So I mean, you've had to start right from ground zero, you know,
basically.
Trust but verify.
And that's just it. And I mean, we're building a killing device, so if we can make it better, let's make it better, right? Like and that's, you know, that's kind of where I'm at with it. I've really sorted through the bits and pieces. I've had don't get me wrong, I've had wrecks. I've had it's going to happen, but I think last year was my best year for, you know, I was as close to 90%.
Yeah.
As I've ever been, and I'm putting it on the gear, and these wires. I mean, like I said, I've got some of these coil wires that you know, 2-3 coyotes, and they've been buggered up enough that I replace them, and I've got some that are I'm over 30 coyotes on them, and I'm wondering at what point here should I be changing this wire out? But if you're not wired tight to the tree, and that pivots on the tree, that's your swivel there, you've got your swivel in the coil itself, it just, it all,
Yeah, well,
plays
that's
plays a
once
part,
again,
right?
people don't even think about the fact that that coil is itself a swivel, right? And
Yeah.
that helps it. It helps it in hanging. It helps it in everything else. I mean, that's always been my bugaboo when I'd have a plastic whammy or a screw-on whammy or whatever, and you jam
Yep.
it on the 9-wire and try and get it to hang after that, and then it would have a kink, and because you're inducing a torque when you're trying to tighten it in
Yep.
there, right?
That's right.
The you have a YouTube website or YouTube site, Lights Out
Yep.
Snaring?
Yeah, it's Lights Out Snaring. Yep.
Yeah,
I've
and
got
there are
videos
some
and stuff.
how-to videos there, and they're
Yep.
you show especially how you tie that 9-wire to a tree, and I think that's
That's
an
right.
important thing that people should look at. We don't have a pair of pliers out there twisting it tight.
No.
You don't want that. You want it to be able to move around. 9-wire in itself, by the time you kink it around that once or twice, I mean, it's never going to straighten out, because he's got to pull it. He's got to pull it from the back of that tree. He's got to put that pressure around it, and just the fact that it's curved in the tree, all the stress is right there. It's never
Yep.
going to pull it loose, right?
No, and yeah, and there's one of the videos there too. I show where I hand tighten it around the tree, and I'll just take my pliers. If it's too loose on the tree, I'll just take my plier up against the tree and then give the wire a little twist to tighten it on, and it snugs it up to hang, just to hold the snare in place. But as soon as it starts pulling on it, something pulls on it, it swivels on that tree, and you don't.
Yeah.
It's just like taking a pair of piece of mechanics wire, like your 16 gauge wire with your pliers, and working it back and forth a few times, you break it off, right? Because
Yep.
you've got that, yeah,
that weak spot,
it's tight.
that
Yep.
fracture. Yeah.
And that's what we try to get away with. And I anchor, I make these coil wires, I anchor them as close, as far away from that coil as I can. I make that as long as I can when I'm tying it onto the tree, and then I start shortening it up either by going around the tree with I don't want to. I'm honestly as short a snare as I can go is what I'm running. I try not to give them too much leash, because it's like walking your dog. If you walk your dog on a 12-foot leash, he's pulling you all over the place. He's wrapped up around all sorts of things. If you got him short, he's
under control.
He's under control, right?
Yeah.
And he's using his power. It's like the kill springs. So with the Signature Series kill springs, they're going to release. I got guys using them. Like I've only had one on an accidental that never fired, but the springs, those bigger springs on the coyotes and stuff, it overpowers the coyote and closes things up. Where with the wolves, if you're running these A1 springs, the Magnum springs, wolves have enough power to, if something happens at that spring, something slips and that spring has opened up all the way, the wolves got enough power. If they start closing that lock and stuff, getting it tighter and tighter, they got enough power to overpower these springs, which aids in the smaller spring on the wolves.
So I mean, they're increasing the compression because they have the power.
Because they've got the power they can overpower this spring, right?
Okay.
So if that makes sense, that's where
one thing
it's easier to hide. Yeah.
One thing we didn't point out on both your springs is that the trigger is actually on the spring.
Yep,
okay?
That's right. So
another system, hold up a little bit. There you go.
Sorry. Yeah.
And the other system, or another system people are familiar with, that trigger actually floats on the cable. And
That's right.
find that having that trigger right on that spring, because it's so much more rigid, you get a lot better control on the set off pressure, right?
Well, then that's the whole thing, right? So you can see how this hangs here. Now you can see that the washer stuff it's not hindering how it's not going to hang up on that trigger and keep it from firing. And everything's just, there's only one place to set that. So when you go to set it, it gets, I don't know if you guys can see this, but it gets pushed up against, and and you don't have to try to make it set, go off easier. Just push it in, snap it into place, and away she goes. I very seldom have issues with the triggers slipping off. In fact, I carry them around set in my pocket. I used to carry the Signature Series ones in my pocket, and my front pocket, and I'm like, you know what? I don't want that to go off. If for some reason, I have, yeah. And I've never had one. I've had a few of the triggers go off when we were picking up snares at the end of the season, and then just throwing them over the handlebars of the snow machine, and they're sitting there banging together. I've had them slip there, but I've set them and tossed them on the cement floor.
Yeah.
And yeah, like it's a positive set, and for the most part, you've got gravity working for you to
Exactly.
To set these up. I've got new setting pliers and stuff coming out. I should have these in the next week or so.
Oh, cool.
And the whole idea of that is there's grooves in here for each springs to sit in here.
Oh, gotcha.
And then so you can see how that grabs.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Sits in there, right?
Yep.
Instead of we had to upgrade these to bigger screws and stuff in order to make them work. And I'm still with the bigger screws. We're still folding them over with the bigger kill springs.
Yeah.
So I went away from the screw design and we made our own design that it's a stainless steel, shouldn't rust. I went with black handles just because I wanted to get the handles that wanted to make sure that they were going to function and not slip off.
Yeah.
Like the red handles, when it gets cold, they just slip off. These, once I know that this size and everything's going to be good, they'll be yellow handles, so they'll be easy to find and stuff like that.
I'm a king of that, but I'm lucky because every animal that I ever check or take out of or whatever, it's always being filmed. So I'll be in the edit suite and I'll look there and I was like, oh, there's where I dropped the centers. I'll go back and get them.
Note to self. Yeah, that's right.
Sandy calls it my spring Easter egg hunt.
Yeah. That's so true. Yeah. So
well, this has been awesome, bud. Tell everybody where they can find you and your products.
So I've got dealers. I guess throughout Canada, more and more guys are picking our stuff up. So you can go onto our website at lightsoutsnaring.ca, and I've got a list of dealers and stuff that have them. I've got new dealers that I'm putting on, just upgrading the website and stuff. My website, I don't have an online store on my website, but if you email me what you want, or I'll put her together and we can go that way with it. So I've got the Lights Out Snaring at gmail.com is my email address, and our Lights Out Snaring YouTube channel, and the lightsoutsnaring.ca. So everything's it's all Lights Out Snaring.
It's all a smooth system, right?
Yeah, that's right. You'll either get Lights Out Snaring or Lights Out Snoring. It's one or the other, but it's
well, perfect. I have really enjoyed this, and thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That's I appreciate it. And it was a good visit, and hope to do it again. That'll be good.
All right. Thank you everybody for joining us today, and we hope maybe we'll see you down the line.